Current practices are definitely not sustainable at the moment, especially the way we are going. The food system has quite a lot of impact on environment, and the vice versa. The environment, the climate change will have quite a lot of impact on the food systems. So the way we are heading now is quite industrialized agriculture, where we are doing quite a lot of deforestation, and then again on the second hand, we have a very small small farmlands. Most of the farmers, 80-85% of the farmers, especially in context of India, we are having they are having very small farmlands. So having sustainability parameters, telling them about sustainable practices and not incentivizing them for those sustainable practices is not going to work. So there's a lot of efforts that needs to happen. Not just from the farming communities, because it is their job to produce the food, but there is also the other things that is happening. We are wasting quite a lot of food that we produce. So we are at the moment in a quite inefficient food system. We are producing more, we are wasting more, we are consuming, many times we are consuming more than what we need. So if we'll just look into the efficiency of the entire food system and try to work on the resources, balance them, make it a little bit more environment friendly, then hopefully we'll be in a much better position than what we are today.
And how does one do that? If you could tell us a bit about your work, because in India, yes, malnourishment among children is a very important issue and something at NDTV we've been reporting on. It's shocking, some of the figures that we have, and that's something that we all need to think about, the poor. And you're saying, yes, a huge amount of food wastage, and it's such a shame to think with the disparity we have, and we still manage to waste so much food. So tell us a bit about smart proteins and about your in Odisha, the work that you're doing, the millet mission there, because millets has also become such a popular word these days, and going the millet way, and the Prime Minister himself has been talking so much about millet. There's a millet song which we'll tell you about, but yes, tell us about your work in Odisha.
So when we talk about the smart proteins, we are not telling you about replacing the entire animal proteins. I think we have to just be smarter enough to understand that we need a proper sort of balance between plant-based protein and animal-based protein. In UK, most of the sales are, almost 90% of the sales are coming from animal-based proteins, which is quite a lot. And if we are going to change that from 90 to 10 ratio, 90 being animal protein, 10 being plant-based protein, to 50-50 protein, then we'll absolutely achieve the net zero target. We have done all the calculations, we have given the calculations, people are now started to work on those. We have given them the pathways as well. So coming to India, I think millets was presenting a really good animal protein alternative, especially the different varieties of millet, because millet is not just one crop. And still it is very under-researched. At the moment, we still are only knowing maybe maximum 7 to 8 to maximum 10 varieties of millets, whereas I've been to the tribal communities, I've worked there. There are more than 200, 250 varieties which are still not, they haven't been documented yet. We still don't know the amount of proteins that they are having, or the calcium that they are having, magnesiums, or the micronutrients that they are having. So there is a lot of discussions going on that probably millet could be our next superfood. We heard the story of quinoa, being a superfood, and 16 grams of protein in 100 grams of quinoa. I think many of the varieties of millets is about 12 to 13 grams per 100 grams.
Right, and in fact the previous session was talking about startups and good idea, maybe this could be the big idea. I'm surprised actually that millets hasn't taken off in that way, because we've heard so much about millets in the last couple of years, or maybe it's just me being at NDTV. But tell us about your millet mission that you've been a part of in Odisha. What is that all about, and is that something we can replicate in other states?
Yeah, sure. So Orissa Millet Mission, it's a very different way of policy making, I would tell you, because most of the policy making that I've come across is mostly closed door policy making. We have 20-25 experts from across the different areas, and they'll do the policy documentation, and they'll have the policy ready for whoever is going to implement that. It doesn't work like that. So what we did for Orissa Millet Mission is like we created a kind of feedback loop system. It's a kind of co-learning system. So not just the policymakers telling what farmers would need to do or what self-help groups would need to do, but also self-help groups and the farming communities, different NGOs working from the block level to district level to state level, telling government what works, what doesn't work. It's a kind of continuous co-learning cycle that we have created with OMM, and most of those, OMM meaning Orissa Millet Mission, they are now quite open for academic inputs and especially knowledge partners inputs. So not just opening the floors to the big and large consultancies who come and say that, okay, these are the top 3 or top 5 things that from the policy making point of view you should be doing. Most of them would have horizontal knowledge, but if you are taking the input from the implementers, the farming communities, the research institution, and involving them into your policy making, it's a quite inclusive way of policy making. So that's what Orissa Millet Mission is doing. The second thing is about, most of the time we hear from farm to fork approach, and here we are doing fork to farm, meaning that we are raising awareness at the consumer level and creating and having a kind of ripple down effect to the farming communities. And also government is quite progressive there. They have offered MSP for the millets production, which is quite encouraging for the farming community, especially the new farmers who would be wanting or not wanting to adopt millets. They are going forward because there is an MSP for millets. So quite a few policy actions, but also quite a lot of attempt happening from the government. I don't know how many of you watch Master Chef, but Vikas Khanna and Government of Orissa, they have quite a good relationship, and now last few episodes in MasterChef is also featuring different products made from millets or can be made from millets. So we really need a lot of product innovation, healthy product innovation from healthy products, including millets.
Okay, well, great to hear about your dish experience so far. And one often sees in government there's a policy and it may not work and on the ground, and then nothing really changes. It takes a long time for that feedback. So yes, I think this sort of integrative approach is much better when it comes to such issues. And when we COP28 is taking place and we talk about climate change, what does that mean for food security? That's the other word we keep hearing, food security, India's food security. So what would climate change and what would you share with us, what it means for us going down this road?
Thanks, Gargi. So on that basis, I would break it down into 2 aspects. Climate change impacting the productivity, climate change impacting the connectivity. So productivity versus connectivity. So productivity, and again, in terms of the food security, you'll have to have access to the food, you'll have to have the food being affordable, and you'll have to have the food being nutritious and healthy for the consumers. So in terms of productivity, of course, the changing weather patterns, the pests that they are emerging at several, because of the temperature changes or the humidity changes, is impacting the production, is impacting the soil as well, because even a minor degree changes in the soil impacts the microbial. And I'm not a microbiologist, but I know this because my PhD was in the climate change. So it impacts the microbial communities, the way they interact with the rhizomes or the roots of the plants. So any slight changes in temperatures would disturb the productivity of the farm. Any changes in terms of the rainfall, the weather patterns, again, disrupt the whole ecosystem that the farmer is working on. So again, if the food is not produced well, then it will again affect the food security. In terms of connectivity is not just because of the climate change, but also because of the other factors. And when I say connectivity, it's related to food being produced on the farm and getting connected to the buyers, whoever that buyers is, whether that's a supermarket, local retailer, sabji wala, or the direct consumers. that gets affected because your roads and the infrastructures and everything gets affected because of the unnatural weather patterns.
All right, well, agriculture is a huge issue in India, and there's a lot of politics involved in it as well. But let's talk about consumer, literacy in terms of sustainable foods. And we see often in the markets, various brands have, certain claims that this is, it's organic, etc., or it's got a stamp of a certain agency that tells us this is something that was made sustainably or grown sustainably. So about that, if you could just tell us, create more awareness, and how does this work also, this labeling?
Yeah, so there is another piece of work that I'm doing with some of my colleagues in Hyderabad. They're looking into the different certification, and it's good to have certification, but when we get so many different types of certification, we don't know whom to trust, whom not to trust. I've got my several friends being doctors, and I ask them, and they really want organic food and everything, but the trust is an issue. The certification that they are seeing is not what they have been looking at or believing, or there is no sort of validation that happens. And when we look at the certification, we see that, okay, this is fair trade now, this is Rainforest Alliance, this is Organic India now, so okay, it must be really good for the farmers. However, the research that we conducted shows that most of these certifications are paid by farmers. So the number of certifications you see on the products, meaning that the farmer would have paid for so many different certifications. Unless there has been some sort of interventions by any farmer producer organizations who has taken or absorbed most of the prices, end of the day, most of the time, they are the farmers who are paying for certification. So we have actually proposed some of the actions for policymakers for unifying organic certifications, because it should be farmers who should be benefiting from those certifications rather than just a certifying body, which is what is happening at the moment. I mean, I tell you what would work in India would be right data collection and right data connectivity for farmers. It would work like wonders. Farmers do not have the visibility in terms of the market, what market prices they are going to have. Most of the farmers would auction their product in mandi. Many of the time we end up with the food surplus, and that's why we end up with something like ongoing tomato grand challenge called by the government of India. Why in the first place would you have food surplus if you had the right data to produce how much you should be producing and how much the consumptions are there? So make the best use of AI and the data analytics to give the right signals to the farmers, what needs to be produced, when needs to be produced, how much needs to be produced, and what could be the possible prices for those products. So that would work like wonders. Second thing, again, harnessing the good things about AI or ethical AI and AI for crop rotation. Again, use those data and analytics to tell farmers what crop they should be maybe intercropping with rice or intercropping with millets to raise the productivity, to increase or enhance the productivity. That's not being done yet. And again, investing too much into the robotics and all those things, it would work for US, UK, Australia, those sort of big, large farmlands, countries who are having large farmlands. But for the countries like India, many countries in Africa, where we have smaller farmlands, I think understanding the data analytics, AI capabilities, or even like, some simple phone apps, which gives farmers an understanding of pest management, to market connectivity, to making use of the standard operating protocols for growing XYZ. That is not there. There are things in the policy documents, but there are nobody to train them. Nobody to train them on ground. So it's still a kind of, again, a white paper hanging in the four walls, but it's not really being translated on grounds. So, yeah.
All right, and before we play the Millet song, what is your outlook when it comes to a sustainable food future? Are you optimistic? Do you think we can change these practices? Some people already feel that it's time for us to adapt rather than, really bring about change in terms of the climate change that's already taking place. So adapting, ourselves for this future?
See, I am a very optimistic person. I would say future is bright, future
Glass
is
half
good.
full.
glass half full, always. And especially working with some of the most progressive people on field gives me a bit of a hope that, if we have given some policy actions to be worked on, if we have given some business actions to be worked on, because I also work with the large supermarkets, and they are being taken on board. I'm also working with many smallholder farmers, and they are also showing very good and positive response. So I'm a very hopeful person, and if we are able to showcase some of the things which have worked on field with policy, how much impact it has created, especially the societal impact, I think definitely future is bright. And with these consumers, aware consumers, go for healthy product, especially the teenagers and the youngsters. It's my sincere request, if you do opt for healthy products, future is definitely bright.